Hey everybody, this is Mike, and today I want to talk a little bit, following up to the last video about like the chess players and how, just how clever small groups are able to play large groups, powerful groups against each other. And so it's never an empowering sort of practice when someone points out problems without at least giving inspiration or direction for solutions. So this is kind of more along the lines of solutions. And so the first part here is I want to talk a little bit more about initiation, occultic initiation, and then what we can do about it in a way which is beneficial, which serves your own storyline, your own journey, as opposed to one which is being kind of thrusted upon us. So let's begin with initiation. Initiation is a form, like a structure around like just the very normal human process of as we grow and experience life. Naturally throughout the stages of life, regardless of time and culture, what's going to happen is, a human being is going to be one thing, and then they're going to have experiences, and then they change, and who they were before is going to be different than who they were after. And in its most serving or most highest expression, the initiation is to serve the individual, because it is through this process of being going from one aspect of being and then gaining experience, and then from that you would gain wisdom, and so you grow upon it, you grow upon it, you grow upon it. And so by creating initiatory rites, and they can be like very formal to very informal, like everything from like birthday parties to like graduation ceremonies to like something a little bit more esoteric, secret societies, they're all about, everything is always about initiation, because they recognize when you perform structure around it, it gives these like natural, like psychological energies, or however you want to go and think about like the immaterial, the non-material aspect of the initiation, by putting like initiatory form around it, like whether that be ritual, is a really well-established ritual, or something which is a little bit looser, like it kind of creates like a lattice in which the inner energies, the psychological transformations, the spiritual transformations, it's all the same. We could just, we're just describing it from different contexts. But by having the form, those intangible, those energies grow around that form. And so what we see in a lot of the purposes, or one of the purposes of having occultic hidden mass rituals, which that's the nature of our world right now. It's ruled by these occultic rituals. Is it gives that form, this natural occurrence which is happening of people like kind of changing, and it gives a form to like fit a particular narrative, and we're going through a really big one right now. We've always been if you've lived in the culture, you've always been affected to one degree or another. Let me switch to here right now. This has gotten a lot of looks at lately, people recognizing the similarities between the Olympic opening ceremonies from 2012 in London, and particularly how it tied into all of the dancing medical performers, how much this linked up. This is magic. This is what we think of as magic, predictive programming, ritual, initiation, all this sort of stuff. So this is kind of one example of what I'm talking about in very real, tangible ways. But I want to go back and I want to look at something else that happened in 2012. A lot of people are probably familiar with this as well, and I recommend, if you're not, going and watching it. And it was the I Pet Goat video, which kind of like mysteriously hit the interweb at this 2012 time frame. And there's so much in it, and there's so many different interpretations. And what's really interesting about and powerful about this is, like, depending upon your perspective, you're going to get exactly what, you're going to get your feedback loop telling you this is exactly what it's about. So I don't want to really get into this symbolizes this and that, but look at it from a higher perspective. And it's showing you in this video of how all of the outer culture, controlled mass psychodrama is triggering the initiatory process within the individual. And that is a truth. That is a truth. And, I talked about in other videos about how all of this, why now, why 2020, why is this like the really acute time of a transition. And it's this is all timed in with bigger and greater alignments. And all of this is ultimately about getting the masses, the critical mass of humanity to have their initiation, which is naturally going to occur. Part of them is going to die, and then part of them is going to be someone new, to have that fit into a particular plan. But anytime there is a major transition, this is a major transition, there's always a lot of uncertainty, and that's when the most quote unquote dangerous stuff can happen. And so from the perspective of someone who is trying to orchestrate this event to capture all of the initiatory energies of the masses, this is also an amazing opportunity for individuals who have, a higher degree of awareness, a higher degree of connection with, just feeling there's something happening in their inner world. They can use this time. This time has been stoked. We've all been stoked in order to get to a certain sort of place. And this is a place of initiation, or a place of where the initiation can take place. And so there are many different, the inner experience, the initiatory experience is a big topic. And so I want to just really focus on one small part of that right now, but it's a primary part, or it's a foundational part. And that is, that has to do with, facing fear and cultivating courage, because that's where really it's going to begin, and it's really going to separate this being an experience which you are facilitating versus being more reactionary and having it facilitated for you. So let's talk about fear for a second. So fear is going to be unique for every single person. If you do not have fear in something that, where other people do have fear, that doesn't necessarily make you brave. It just means that's not your hotspot. Everyone's got a place of fear. And, we can tie that back. That's got very strong psychological roots. We can look at it astrologically. We can look at it ancestrally, but there's a fear, and part of what the initiatory process is facing that fear in many ways, and embracing it, and And when that happens, that fear, and particularly like the psychological elements which are tied into the establishment of that fear, they're reclaimed. And so this is one of the major steps of the initiatory process is it's facing the fear, which means cultivating courage. And so, as I said, this is universal within every single person. So you have to, you got to think about what are the things that are intimidating for you, not necessarily in comparison to other people, because there's going to be undoubtedly things that don't, scare you. And so that's not where the fear is. It should be the places where you're intimidated and where you don't feel strong. Where you fall is where you find the gold. And so this is what I want to say. So like this time right now, like this is how you know that this is not being encouraged. What's being encouraged right now is there's going to be outlets for like rage, and rage is within that realm of fear. It's a higher expression than like shame, but it's when it's chaotic and not like necessarily tied into like your own unique personal journey, deeper than anything cultural. It's controlled. So where I want to go with this, and the story that really captured my attention. So like this is back like maybe like 6 weeks ago, when all of the virus stories were starting to really come out. And at that time, like I started watching mainstream news. I was like, I need to know what's being communicated to the masses. And so I watched a show which I didn't know about before, and I think it was like on Fox News, maybe. I don't know. I was flipping through all of them, and it's this guy, Chris Cuomo, who is, apparently, supposedly the governor of New York's brother. And he is a talking head personality. And how he's positioned is like, on one hand, he's like, the symbol of male strength. It always shows him like working out, like, is this really kind of like strong, powerful man. But the guy goes and he gets the virus. And I'm watching like his reports from his home of having the virus. And it's the funniest friggin' thing, like when you watch it. But what struck me as so significant of what was being communicated is he kept on saying, I'm so scared. It's so scary. Scare, fear, fear, fear. And really like, encouraging the attitude of like, it's good to be afraid, and it's good to be, to embrace the fear as like, I want to be scared, as opposed to like being brave or cultivating courage, which is facing the fear. And the fact that he has been positioned in the past as kind of like a symbol of physical strength, that it's a bit, that is a deeper level encouragement of what is being asked upon people with their fear as we go into this scary time of the unknown. Like this fear is going to strike the virus, particularly when the virus was still part of the narrative. That is going to hit different people fear-wise in different ways, whether or not you buy it hook, line, and sinker, that storyline, or you go and say like, holy crap, they're going to go and use this to go and, force something in my body, which I don't want in my body. Like no matter what, it's going to stoke it if you're hooked into that storyline. And so it's really if part of the message which was being passed on was like, be afraid, and it's okay to be afraid. But that's not initiatory. That's a lower initiatory. That's not going to empower the person. And so what the empowerment, or what the initiation is always about, regardless of what the initiation is, facing a particular fear. And what that means is not having fear, but having the courage to go and stand within that. And at the end of the day, this is always 100% an inner experience. We tie it to an outer experience because that's where it gets, it really can be grounded within us physically and psychologically and emotionally and spiritually. But that's how we grow to the next level. And so there's always these different types of initiations, and it's the cultivating of the courage, the ability to go and face something that intimidates you, where the gold is. It doesn't matter what the fear is. So that being said, let me change gears for a little bit and talk about this image which I'm showing you right here. And this ties to a guided meditation which I've recently released called Facing Fear, Cultivating Courage. And the purpose of this guided meditation was, or is, to practice the skill set of cultivating courage and facing fear. Because that's what the skill set is. Part of this is like learning a new skill, and the skill is just that, to not allow fear, lower levels of consciousness, reptilian brain sort of stuff to like dictate one's response. You know, we want to move up in our control of our inner world, control of our experience, control of how we respond to the outer world versus, you know, reacting. And so that's a skill set, and part of that is not being triggered by fear. This is why that Chris Cuomo, like, it's okay to be fearful. Like, it's almost the opposite message of what I'm describing right now, which is like, you know, yes, we want to respect like that fear is part of our journey, but it's the facing it and cultivating it, which is where we find the gold, and that's going to be unique for each person. So the meditation begins with, or the idea behind it is this artwork. And so probably around like 2010, that time frame, like I suddenly just started receiving a lot of like internal imprints, you know, wherever that stuff comes from, your imagination, you know, I don't know where this stuff comes from. But like I'm just being flooded with these kind of like images and this really, really strong desire to take it from my head and like and create something with it. And there was part of me that like wanted to paint, but I don't really know how to paint. And I knew that these images were majestic, and I did not want to allow my inability of being able to really express this image to be a hindrance to what this visual image was. So I was like, well, what I can do is I can cut and I can glue. So I kind of created this technique I call painting with paper, where like each strip of paper is like a paint stroke. And I created these images. And so these very like, you know, these archetypical images which transcend specific narratives of what's going on or context. And so this has always been one of my favorites right here. And maybe around 2015, and there was like a 2-year period where I made a bunch of these. You know, that's all I did. It was one of the most exciting times of my life, but I just would make these pieces of art, and they're very well received, and you know that was definitely a chapter in my life. And so then I moved out of that chapter, and my life had changed, and I always knew about these images. Like I wanted people to look at them because I knew that it would communicate and like pull out a very archetypical expression, right here. I mean, that's what this is all about. Facing fear, cultivating courage, is like this character here is crossing this chasm, and like, they're kind of doing it. They're stumbling right here. It's not a graceful sort of process, but as they stumble, they are infused from above of something which is like of a different sort of expression than regular life. And so it is from the courage of making the walk, and it doesn't have to be pretty, but then the surrendering to it is where, like, it all kind of comes together, whatever it is, the magic of being a human, the magic of life experience. I call it magic because we don't fully understand its workings, but we can see it's occurring. So I created this image, and I always, like, I wanted that, and I knew that this was being expressed like in a deeper level to anyone who would like really sit and look and contemplate with it. But I wanted to bring it a little bit deeper. And so what I did was I created a story around this. I created a story utilizing everything which I had been studying and learned at the time of like how consciousness works, of like how, like, Hollywood magic works, how, like, hypnosis works, like all of these different things about like how we get into these states of receptivity. And so I created this story, and it's told in the first person. And so the first person, so like you as the listener are hearing it. And this what happens whenever we watch TV, whenever we watch movies. There's a part of us that really thinks this is happening to us. This is why your heartbeat starts going up in a suspenseful scene, because, there's a part of you that thinks it's real, because the part of you that knows, oh, I'm just watching a TV, like there'd be no reason for your heart to start beating faster, because it's not real. But there's a part of you that thinks it's real. And this is one of the reasons why, like, media is such a powerful, and movies are such powerful tools of changing consciousness, or at least creating neural pathways, all sorts of stuff. So it was taking that sort of knowledge and applying that knowledge into telling this story, like, and making it vague enough that it could apply to everyone, but like specific enough that like everyone can kind of like, could go and recognize the universal truth of this story of, like, really like being in a situation where you're like, you need to go somewhere, and like kind of, waffling back and forth, like, do I go there? I'm a little bit afraid, blah, blah, blah. And then finally starting to do it, and like struggling, and then surrendering to it. And so that story is being told, and it's being told in a certain way, the way the syntax of the words, all that sort of stuff. And so I wrote that, and then I started performing this. I started performing this with friends of mine, really talented musicians and sound healers, Sarah Murray and Asa Tafari, and I would have this. So let me say this. I forgot the main part. The conclusion of the story is this image. Like suddenly, like everything makes sense. Now I get this image. Now it all makes sense. I went through this inner experience. I experienced it, and then I saw this, and now I have a visual link. And so me and Asa and Sarah, we started performing these live, and they were spectacular. They're spectacular experiences, because they were like so rich, like so much thought and effort was put into like creating the setting, from like, the lighting to the sound, to like the smells, to like, everything was thought of, because to really have a deep, rich experience, we want to tap into as many of our senses as we can. So I created all of that, and for like maybe about a year or two, I did a bunch of these, very well received, loved doing them, and then, that chapter of my life kind of ended. And I went on to other things. That's probably right around when I started the whole Susquehanna mystery research. But recently, I wanted to revisit these. I called them art journeys. These art journeys because I knew how powerful they were, and I loved doing them. And and the timing kind of seemed right. This was before like probably February, maybe January timeframe of this year. And so what I did, me with the assistance of an amazingly talented musician and sound healer, Krista Seitz, I recorded this and she created the soundscape, and this is now available like in digital form. Like, you go and you sit in front of your computer and you listen, and you have that experience. And what this is practice. What it's practice for is the natural ability to have the courage to. I mean, we all have certain degrees of courage. Where we really know where the courage is needed is where the rubber meets the road. The things that are still intimidating, which you don't want to do, but you need to do. And so by doing these types of exercises, what this does is it puts into consciousness, it puts into neural pathways, however you want to describe it. Like, you're working out the ability to go and cultivate courage to go through those steps, and you're doing it in a very, very safe environment and a very, very significant environment. When you're stepping into like I want to go into a meditative state. I want to go and do something which is significant in my inner world. Like, you're communicating to your deeper self, like, yeah, I take this seriously. So it's like, this is practice, and it's different than going and watching a movie. Watching a movie is a esoteric, particularly if you're watching it like, oh, I can't wait to see this movie. I'm going to go to the theater and all this sort of stuff. And that's kind of special in itself. You're going to go to be entertained, but this is where esoteric or an occult ritual that may or may not be in your best what's best for you. You're walking into it blind. What's different about when you're doing something which is, you understand that this was designed specifically for this to come about, well, then you have more control, and you're also like in more of an alignment with like, this is why I'm doing it. The higher part of your mind, your decision-making part, you're like, this is what I'm doing, is in alignment with like, when we're going to go and work on our deeper levels, which are always in play, but I know this is what I'm doing and this is what I'm doing it for. So we created these. These are available right now, so you can listen to this. And so on my website, Susquehanna Alchemy, this is it right here. It's the Art Journey Meditation, Facing Fear, Cultivating Courage. I think it's 18 minutes long. And again, just listening to the soundscape in itself is spectacular. But what you're doing when you do listen to it is you're building this internal muscle, this internal framework, this internal structure, so that in waking reality, in real reality, when life presents these opportunities to really like step into something which has once been intimidating, and this is the initiation, is that there's a familiarity. All of the conditioning of like, be fearful, be afraid, listen to me, I got the solution. That doesn't hold as much weight, and that's been a big part of our cultural programming recently. And there's more control. So, this here is $6 to download. But this isn't about the money. Like, it helps. This is, as long as we've got a financial system and we got bills to pay, we got to do this. But it's more important to me that this tool, which I think is fantastic, is used. So, if $6 is too much for you, use, when you order it, coupon code AJ, Art Journey 50% off. Pay $3 for it. If that's too much, $3, put 100 in. Use it for free. I just want this to be experienced. Because I know there's something powerful. I'll give you, I've gotten a lot of, this has been downloaded, I don't know, maybe 20 times so far. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from the people who have listened to this. And each person, unique to them, has found it to be very, very, they've had a tangible response to it. And I guess I want to end this final part, like, and this is good. Hopefully you're still listening, because this is it's a good story right now. I want to tell you my own personal story of when I wrote this. I wrote this, as I said before, in like 2015. And I was going through a very major transition in my life. You know, I was facing my fears, you know, every single thing. This is true for like, anyone who's involved consciously in the inner world, you know, whether you want to look at that mainstream psychology sort of thing, or you want to look at it like, you know, spiritually or shamanically or, you know, artistically, it's all kind of the same. But like the people who do that, it's because they're working on themselves. They are reflecting their own inner work. So this facing fear, cultivating courage was really, really significant, in that particular transition within my journey. And ultimately, as you go and you practice these types of works, and you rewire your nervous system and you rewire your consciousness, like your relationship with fear changes very much. But at this time, like, you know, I was face to face with a lot of my own personal fears, you know, as like my life was like really, really changing. And so I wrote this, and I remember going to this coffee shop every morning, and I would write it. And the very, very first time I was going to go and speak the words out loud, like I had written it, and like, you know, in all the different versions and edits to get it just right. I had always just kind of like set it in my mind. You know, I did not voice the words out loud. So the very first time I go to voice it out loud, it was, you know, this is July time frame, and I get a call from a good friend, a friend I needed to see at the time. And he was like, hey, there's another friend of ours who's having a birthday, and everyone's meeting down at this tavern, and like, you know, how about we go down together? And I'm like, and I was just about to go, and what I wanted to do was practice saying this facing fear, cultivating courage, meditation out loud, because I wanted to see how long it was. You know, I wanted to know the length, and I wanted to practice just like, you know, the cadence of the voice and all that sort of stuff. So I told my friend, I was like, all right, give me about like a half an hour and then come over, because I thought that would be enough time. So I was subleasing like an apartment at the time, and I get it all ready, and I voice and I speak this meditation how I would in a setting where I would do it in front of other people. That was what my intention was and how I set it up. So I go and I say that, and like, I'm like, okay, you know, that felt right. It felt like whatever. In fact, I don't even remember. I just remember finishing it. So shortly after that, my buddy comes and he knocks on the door. I'm like, okay, let's go. So we walk down, and I was in Lancaster City at the time. And this place we're going was like, I don't know, like maybe like 4 or 5 blocks away. And me and my friend are walking down the street. And all of a sudden we hear, it's maybe 10 o'clock at night, like middle of the week. And this guy like, calls for us. Hey. And he like gets up, he's across the street, and he kind of like runs over. And, both Bill and I, like, you know, we both like kind of looked at each other. Like we both sensed like, you know, there's something kind of off with this, like just how it felt. And, this kid comes up, probably, I don't know, like I'd say 20 years old, big oafy looking white kid. And he was wearing a fleece, a zip up fleece. It was like 90 degrees out. You know, it's the middle of the summer. He's wearing a fleece. And there was this whole conversation happening, and probably lasted about like 5 minutes. And there was like, the conversation on the level was like seemingly normal, but burning underneath, like there was something off. There was something not right about the situation. And, my friend is really good at being able to de-escalate. situations. And probably the reason he's so good at de-escalating situations is because in his younger years, he had been involved in a lot of situations. So like this is a familiar, place for him, like, you know, this sort of tension, like what's going to happen? Like there's something like strange occurring. And he de-escalates it, and then we turn our way, and this other guy kind of like turns and goes back. And I remember what I was feeling at that time, because me and my friend were kind of walking down the street. Maybe we're like a little bit loud, and we're like, you know, having fun, you know, as we're talking and laughing. And I immediately went back into that type of conversation. And I was doing that. At least I remember thinking in my mind that, let me do this because that was really weird, and I want to kind of like let's get out of the weirdness so that that guy doesn't think, you know, that we were shaken by the situation. So as soon as that happened, he starts shouting. It's maybe like 15, 20 feet behind us. And he's like, "What? You think this is a joke?" He was telling us a story about how the next day he was going to go to prison. And this was his last evening before he had to report to, like, you know, whatever it was. I think he had to like spend like 30 days for, I don't know, something. It wasn't anything major, but so he starts like yelling and shouting, "You think this is a joke? You think this is a joke?" And he starts like charging at us, like not running, but like coming at us in this very, very aggressive sort of way. And me and my friend were on a sidewalk, and we're kind of like backpedaling right now. My friend, we're backpedaling on the sidewalk, and he then walks in between two cars, which are parallel parked, you know, next to the curb on the sidewalk, and walks out into the street. The street wasn't busy, and there were, you know, it's 10 o'clock at night on a Thursday in a kind of like a residential area. There wasn't a lot of traffic, and I kind of followed behind him. And so I'm the one who's closest to this guy who's kind of charging. And then I'm out in the middle of the street, and this guy who's charging is like, now he's in the middle of the street too, and he's like maybe about 10 feet away from me. And he goes and he unzips his jacket, and he reaches down, and he pulls out a gun. And as soon as he says that, this is what I do. It was almost like outside of myself. I just go like this. I go, "Whoa!" And I throw my hands up, "Whoa!" But I did it like there wasn't like an intensity behind it. It was almost, there was almost like this middle, it didn't feel weak. It didn't feel strong. It was just a response. And you know what I'm about to say, like the only reason I wouldn't even tell anyone this story because it sounds so ridiculous, except that there was a witness. My friend was there and he saw the whole thing. And this guy who's reaching for a gun, he's 10 feet away from me. And this, like, you know, this escalated like instantaneously. Like, you know, within 30 seconds of like thinking the whole thing had de-escalated to like where I am right now in the middle of the road. And I go, "Whoa." The dude just freezes. Like, not like I put like a spell on him and he was like in a freeze mode. Just like this expression of just like covered his face. And in that like short moment, I was able to go back onto the sidewalk, and he was still standing in the street. And then he just kind of like, I don't know, started like maybe like kind of walking, but like now there are cars between me and my friend and this guy in the street, and he's no longer really coming at us. He's just kind of standing in the street, and me and my friend, we go about 10 feet and we turn right on an alley, and then we take off running. And you know, that is undoubtedly that experience. And I want to put this in context. This happened literally, within a half an hour of me voicing these words of this like facing fear meditation. And, you know, what could be more of a expression of like facing like your physical fear of like having someone like that. That's not really my background. You know, I'm not used to, you know, being in situations where people pull guns on me. But to actually then have the experience of seeing that happen, and then something like, which I can't explain, kind of stepped in, whatever that may be, and de-escalated for this short moment, like created this window of like, you know what, like, there's some things which can't be understood. You know, this is how, one of the ways I understand initiation. We can't fully understand the stuff that happens as we change and we grow, but we witness it. That's the mystery. That's the whole thing with life. And when we see these things like actually happen in our lives, you know, that is where we then begin, and we can really step into like, I can face what's in front of me. You know, I don't know what is going to happen. I don't know how I'm going to face, but what I can do is put that next right step in front of where I'm standing. And so, you know, that's what this is all about. That's what this talk is all about. This idea of facing fear, cultivating courage, and this really being our time for our own. We're being brought into this initiation. Watch iPet Goat 2. It's showing you. They're saying this is the initiation. You're going to go through an initiation, and this is one of the tools which is available to us. Meditation, natural world, friendship, inventorying, like all this sort of stuff, like, you know, utilize these tools, to really take advantage of the opportunity which is being presented before each of us at this given time to, initiate, to level up to, you know, this next version of ourselves. So, hopefully you'll, take a listen to this. And if you do, share your comments, you know, what you think. I'd love to hear it. And, I'm grateful to be able to share this journey with, you know, all you folks who are listening to it, like to listen to this video. So thank you very much. I'm immensely grateful that this is no longer just something which I'm experiencing inside, but which I get to share. So not much more I can say other than that.